Welcome and thank you for standing by. Your lines are in listen-only mode until today's question and answer session. If you would like to enter the queue to ask a question, you may do so by pressing star and then 1. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objection, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the call over to Marsheck Hibbets. You may begin.
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you are joining from. My name is Marsheck Hibbets, Executive Director of the Global Chamber, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. here. First of all, I wish all of you and your family continue to remain safe and healthy during this time. For those of you who are joining our webinar for the very first time, we call a webinar a Globinar because of the global reach of these events. Global Chamber has more than 525 metros around the world, and very often people from those metros participate in and connected through our virtual events. The Global Chamber is a member-supported organization with a mission to promote cross-border commerce and trade by enabling businesses local connections at a global scale. Today, together with 3 high-profile international trade support organizations around the D.C. area, which are the Maryland Department of Commerce, the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, and the U.S. Commercial Service, we are putting a Globinar titled The Future of International Trade, What Does the New Normal Mean for Exporters? So as you all agree, COVID-19 has affected businesses of every size and in every sector, locally, nationally, and globally. Especially impactful, the inability to travel and conduct in-person meetings in respective target markets, the cross-border and state, has pushed exporters to rethink their existing strategies from marketing and sales, customer relationships, to business development in their search for continued growth. So as the economy in the United States and the world is slowly reopening, what will the new normal or the abnormal look like, and what would it mean for us exporters? How are exporters to prepare, adjust, and shift in a world that is rapidly changing in the nature of the market, opportunities, and technologies for exporting? So today, we have a great panel of experts in exports, and we will hear exactly how exporters prepare, adjust, and shift in COVID world if necessary. And the companies in the DMV area and beyond that are looking to incorporate virtual strategies discussed today will be connected and guided to assistance programs and resources available through 3 collaborating organizations. So with that, I'd like to give the floor to Doug Brunke, joining from sunny Phoenix, Arizona. Doug is the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. Doug is an international entrepreneur dedicated to helping members of the Global Chamber reach new markets across metros and borders more successfully. He has over 30 years of global business experience in nearly all countries and segments. So thank you, Doug, for joining. And now let's start the Globinar. And the floor is yours. Doug?
Thank you very much, Marsheck. Really appreciate it. This is Doug Brunke from sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where it's expected to be somewhere between 105 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Just like the hot weather here, the exporting opportunities are hot if we know where to look and also if we're aware of how things are changing. So we're going to be talking with some people in the know about exporting around the world and begin to make their predictions based on their own crystal ball experiences of where things are headed so that you can be more successful as well. We really appreciate the opportunity to participate with this Globinar with VEDP, the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, or Maryland Commerce, and also with the U.S. Commercial Service here with Global Chamber. Our first speaker is Bill Marsheck. He's the Manager of International Sales at DAP Products. They are very experienced exporters, and Bill is also not only with DAP but also with other entities you'll see through his bio on our webpage. If we might be able to ask you whether your questions come in to Bill through the chat area or through email, we can encourage you to send emails to info@globalchamber.org, and we'll work on getting your questions answered after each of the speakers speak. So, Bill, why don't you kick us off? Really appreciate you sharing today.
Well, thank you, Doug, and good morning, everyone. Again, in a brief introduction, my name's Bill Marsheck. I'm responsible for the international sales at DAP Products. We're the folks that make the caulk that goes around your tub and the spackle that you use to fix the holes in your wall. Very likely you have our products somewhere in your basement or your garage. And believe it or not, we ship these caulks, these spackles, and other products to over 70 countries around the world. And up until the last few months, that meant for me personally, very frequently getting on a plane, taking my passport, traveling, and visiting customers. Obviously, all of that came to an end very abruptly for many of us. And so, like you, I've had to adapt and find new ways to stay in touch with my customers. So I'd just like to take a couple of minutes and share with you what I've done to continue building relationships with my customers. But first, let's take a quick look at my personal history of communication with international customers. Right when I came out of college, maybe dating myself here a little bit, we were using the telex machine to communicate with customers overseas. This machine required an operator to input our communication, type it in, send a message, and then we would wait for what was called an answer back. Sometimes this answer back may come in, I'll say, quickly, 10, 15 minutes, or sometimes it may even be out into a day or two until we knew for sure that our customer had received our message. It wasn't real fast, but it's what we knew in terms of international communication. Then one day, something called a fax machine showed up in the office. And what seemed like virtually overnight, one machine grew into many machines, and next thing you know, we had a fax farm in this room, and the room that we used to call the copier room was now being called the fax room. This was a step up in communication. It was quick. It was easy to send long messages, almost letter-like messages. And perhaps best of all, we could send images and pictures. But if you remember these days, the images we would send were usually dark, grainy, and somehow they always seemed to have a black line running down the most important part of what we were sending, of the page. Then cell phones came along. We could make international calls, send texts. But, you know, they were a little expensive to use, but still working after hours, in the evening, maybe early morning, we could do a little bit more from home than we could do before with the telex and even the fax machine. Then technology moved along and this thing called Skype came out. Now, very inexpensively for no cost, we could have face-to-face conversations with friends, family, and even customers anywhere in the world. And it was nice to see the person that we were speaking with, but you still had to send an agenda and any documents you'd want to have to review during the meeting to print out in advance and have on the side. Technology continued moving ahead. Fast forward a few years, and cell phones have changed. Everything has changed. And I just want to share with you two really key apps that I have on my phone. The first one is WhatsApp. The second one is called Viber. You may or may not be familiar with these two, but if you do international trade, international communication, if you don't know them, they're two to definitely get familiar with. WhatsApp is my number one because everybody out of the U.S. uses it. If you mention the name of it in the U.S., some people have heard of it. Everybody overseas uses it. It's a must-have on your phone. It lets you send texts, voice messages, images, make phone calls, video calls, and perhaps best of all, it's free. It works over the internet. All you need is a data connection. Definitely a must-have. Viber is my number two. It's also a VoIP. It's a calling app. They've been adding a little bit more to it. Again, it's not free, but you can call, and it's pennies a minute. $20 takes me pretty much all year with Viber. And I use it when I need to call a landline phone, perhaps call an office, to reach a person I don't speak to all that frequently, somebody who I may not have on WhatsApp. Also, the calling feature on WhatsApp and many of the VoIPs is blocked in some of the Middle Eastern countries. So there I will use Viber just to call the office phone or the cell phone of some of my customers located in the Gulf region. Botim, B-O-T-I-M, is another app I also use. It's a very distant third for me, but I have found that at least to the UAE it works, and I use it to communicate with the individual there. Next slide, please, Colleen. So as you've noticed, there's been an explosion over the last few months of online conferencing platforms. Personally, I use GoToMeeting because that's the license that DAP has. I've been on many meetings that have run on Zoom. I believe we're using WebEx here today. There are numerous others. I have to admit that prior to the work-at-home, remote work situation, I used GoTo a little bit, but not a whole lot. I would just send a PDF of some of my presentations to a customer, potential customer. Then we'd get on the phone, we'd just talk through it, or I'd say, read through it, send me an email, and let me know if you have any questions. It probably was not as good as I could get. As a matter of fact, I know it was not as good as I could get. And, some of you may have found yourself in that situation too. It does take a little bit of time to get familiar with these platforms, but, I really encourage you, if you're not using one, to go ahead and do it. They're great. They let you talk, to see each other, share screens. You can pass the screens back and forth to share information. Somebody can say, hey, you know what? I have something, that I think's pertinent, and they can pull up a slide, show it to everybody involved in the conversation. It's about as good as you're going to get without being to meet in person. And who really knows how long it's going to be until we're able to get on that plane again, travel, sit down, and share a meal with our customers and friends. Next slide, please. Let's take a quick look now at some of the specific examples of how I use GoToMeeting. Again, my old way was to send out a PDF deck, say, take a look at it. We'll get on the phone, answering your questions, send me an email. If you click through here briefly, you can see what I've put together. Now, you can go to the end, please. Instead of sending this out kind of in a static mode, I have it up on the screen. I can walk through a new potential customer, explain to them a little bit about each part of the company, and they can ask questions as we go. I've also started doing some new product training on here. That's the slide, the purple slide you see in the bottom. Here, what I've done is I've just taken a marketing presentation made up for the U.S. market. I pull out the slides that aren't pertinent to international, sometimes adding in my own, and I use this. and again, we share it on screen. We walk through it, very much a live presentation. People can say, hey, can you run me through that one more time? Or what about this? Again, it's much better than sending out a static PDF. Next slide, please. And of course, business reviews. I have a small template for this, and I just go and drop in some Excel information pertinent to each customer, and then again, customize it as needed. Then you can share any other type of information from your screen. Something that's a little bit near and dear to my heart personally is my golden retriever, Gemma. I don't share this quite so much over an online presentation as I do WhatsApp. I discovered visiting a customer in Kuwait that he likes dogs. He's a fan of dogs. We were sharing some pictures. I showed him a picture of Gemma. He's like, wow, I love her. She's great. I wish we could have a dog like that here in Kuwait. And so now, every now and then in the middle of our chats, or if Gemma does something, comes home covered in mud, who knows what she's been into, I send him a picture. And again, it's just using technology to build that relationship, to get a little bit of a personal, more of a personal relationship with our customers. You know, I was online with a customer one time. We were having a go-to-meeting, and I heard some small noise in the background. It was obviously much more of a noise for him. He got a look on his face. He said, can you hold for just a minute? I need to check on my son. And then he disappeared around the corner of his room. I was online with somebody else, and we were just starting our conversation, talking a little bit about working remotely, the differences, and we ended up both picking up our laptops, turning them around, showing each other where we were working, talking a little bit about our new office environment. So, you know, it's good to use the technology to build relationships, personal relationships with your customers, because as you know, working in international business, in the international environment, you know, as Americans, we tend to be a little bit cut and dry. In many different cultures, the personal relationship is just as important as the business side of the relationship. And finally, my last slide, some quick tips that I have is, you know, definitely use WhatsApp. Put it on your phone, and a little cheat we could say that I have, that I use a lot, especially during the day, is there are laptop apps that you can download. So while you're communicating with somebody and they're trying to keep up with you typing on their phone, you can be typing on the keypad of your laptop. A little bit of an unfair advantage, but you know, it's really nice. You can put it up on your screen. You can click in and out of it to check your messages during the day. Definitely put it on your phone. Find a laptop app to use. Then I would say create a core deck of slides of information that you want to share. Again, whether it's a company introduction, new products, some kind of product training, a review. Build your core group of slides, and then it's very easy to go in and customize to take a couple out, maybe add a couple of in, depending on that specific customer, that specific presentation. Pick a platform. Again, I use GoToMeeting. Company said, here, you have GoToMeeting, take GoToMeeting. I said, great. And so that's what I use. That's what I've practiced in. I've been on Zoom meetings, WebEx meetings. They've all worked pretty well, but choose one and practice with it. Set up some meetings with friends and family. I learned this a little bit the hard way, jumping in before I quite knew how to use everything. And thankfully, you know, I knew the customers well. It wasn't with any new business we were trying to develop. And I'd have to say, whoops, wait just 1 second. Let me, you know, get the slide over to you. Let me mute everyone. Let me do this. So practice with friends and family before you get online with customers. And then do realize that it's a little bit of a different dynamic than being person to person. You hear so many people say, oh, I'm exhausted. I've been in online meetings all day. Be natural in front of the camera. It's okay to look away. You don't have to stare at it. You can look down to take notes. It's okay. Pick up, have a drink. Just be natural. Be yourself online, just like you would be in person. So briefly, those are some of the changes that I've made to keep in touch with my customers. With tighter restrictions in many countries, it's been a challenge for us who are in the export business, who are accustomed to getting on a plane, going and meeting. But, do make the effort to develop your online presentation skills. It's definitely something that's here to stay. And even, if you don't have a presentation to share, reach out to your customers, send them a WhatsApp, ask them sincerely, how are you doing? What are things like in your country? And that's what I have to share with you guys today. So I'm going to go ahead now, pass the baton back to Doug to introduce the next presenter. Again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Bill, and thanks for bringing back the memory of those teletype machines. I started in 86, 87, and I remember how far away the world seemed in those days. And so thank you for taking us into the new reality of how technology has really, even despite all the things that are happening, technology is assisting us to get to reach these markets. And our next speaker, Jennifer Bacon, she is the show director of fashion and apparel at Messe, Frankfurt of North America. And she's going to be talking to us about the trade show industry and how they've now modified their approach to go virtual. So, Jennifer, thank you for sharing, and we look forward to hearing more.
Hi, thanks, Doug. We are actually the first in our company right now to launch a virtual trade show. So it's a lot I'm discovering and figuring out along the way. So I'll share a little bit about our findings. But first of all, I'm Jennifer Bacon, and I am the show director of our fashion and apparel events in Messe, Frankfurt, North America. And I'm really glad to be here to be able to tell some about our background and also some updates we've made for pivoting into this new normal that we're discovering. A little bit about Messe Frankfurt in general. We're based in Frankfurt, Germany. And as you can see from the numbers here, we have a very large global presence. And our international reach includes Asia, Europe, Africa, all of the Americas, and really throughout the whole world. And we bring in roughly 4.5 million visitors to our events worldwide every year. We have a largest textile portfolio in all the world for trade shows, but we also produce a lot in automotive, machinery, and consumer good industry. So next. And my show specifically that I work on is Text World and Apparel Sourcing USA, and they're based in New York. They happen 2 times a year, and we also have a home segment as well in the summer. The show is based in New York because it's the fashion capital for the U.S., and we have a huge networking community for the sourcing world, and we're known as being a hub for education. We cover the full spectrum of textiles, so it's your women's, men's, children's wear, the textile finish apparel from all the way from sportswear to bridal, all across the whole gamut of what you would need for sourcing apparel. And like I said, we do have a home segment in the summer. Some of the pictures on the next slide here. These are actual pictures from our event this past summer, and we have lots going on there. Obviously, the main point of our event is for sourcing, so we have a huge crowd, about 7,000 in the summer come to our event in New York, and you'll see there's sourcing, but there's also a trend forum. We have fashion shows, seminars, textile talks, so it's a real community gathering that we have at the show in New York. So the first thing when we decided to go global, we were looking at these elements and trying to figure out how can we bring this all into a virtual showcase. So we wanted to make sure we covered as much aspects as possible that we could do in a physical show within the virtual event. So basically, when we first looked at this, we had to figure out what our strategy was. Like, how are we going to do this? What are our goals? What are we trying to accomplish by doing this? And number one, we had to provide a platform for our global manufacturers and our North American buyers where they could still somehow communicate and do business together despite everything that's going on. And I'm sure you guys have noticed, you know, if you read any news outlets, there's the JCPenney's, the J. Crews, Neiman Marcus, everyone is filing Chapter 7. We have tariffs that we've had to deal with in the past. So the industry itself, the fashion industry and the textile community has major disruption right now, and it's really not in a good place, and it wasn't before COVID. So basically looking at that, we wanted to somehow still offer the community a place to still meet, and we wanted to have sourcing and education tools that they could keep them somewhat relevant on like what's happening in this community because it's changing so quickly, and they wanted to keep them involved in some way, in some capacity. But also when they go back to their normal business and they get back into the marketplace again, they wanted to have like a seamless transition back into it. So they wouldn't be so left out. So if someone's on furlough or if they're at home and out of business right now, at least it's like an outlet for them to at least be educated on what's happening in the community and how they're going to adjust when the new normal, like what is the new normal going forward. So we wanted to make sure that we offered at least an education platform and then also a place for the community to gather. So we looked at a virtual platform. We had talks after talk with, you know, the community, our buyers, our partners in China, all over through the world. What do they need? What do they need exactly? What's going to meet all the guidelines for people to still have business and still be connected? And one was basically matchmaking, because you're not able to walk through a trade show and see, you know, what are all the offerings they can offer. So we found it like we needed AI-powered matchmaking, which meant that, you know, someone can look and we want something sustainable, we want some denim, and then we could easily match them instead of going through pages and pages on a website. So that was one thing. We needed a personalized exhibitor page, so it kind of works like how your LinkedIn or your Facebook page, but you're able to upload all your information about your company so a buyer can find out. You can have one-on-one video chats, basically what we're doing now, and set meetings and agenda. And most importantly was to keep our education component really solid. So we have live streaming and all our webinars just pretty much in the same format we have now. So we needed all the capabilities, but the number one was like, we have to make this like very easy, seamless user experience. So that was the ultimate goal of all of it. I mean, we're never going to replace, we're in a touch and feel business, and I don't think anything technology ever will replace face-to-face interaction. But we had to kind of jump to the future anyway. So I think COVID, if anything, pushed us to get more into a virtual digitalization world because it had to be that way. So I always say, like, nothing's going to replace face-to-face, I don't think ever, but we have to still be a supplier for the community. So the next is like a little video that shows what the platform kind of looks like. Yeah, so that was, basically just a highlight on where we are right now as far as what the platform's going to look like. So the show is still taking place the same exact time it would have taking place in New York. So it's July 21st through 23rd, and it's free for industry professionals. We're already having about 16 different countries represented at the show, so we still expect to have a big global offering. And, of course, the education component is really great. So definitely log on and find out some information, registration. We have pre-registration, and, again, it's no cost for industry professionals. So that's it. Thank you, guys, for your time with this.
Awesome information, Jennifer. Thank you very much. And so that is starting on July 21st. One of our partners is the Canton Fair. They're doing a virtual affair on June 14th, the month before. So I encourage you to jump into both of those events and see how it works for you. Our next speaker is equally experienced and knowledgeable about international. Paul Neville is the Chief Operating Officer of Angimmune. And Paul, you're going to be sharing more about your experience and your crystal ball in terms of what this new normal is doing for you and your business and how others might be able to benefit. Thank you for sharing.
All right. Thank you, Doug. So my name's Paul Neville. Work at Angimmune, kind of run a small clinical stage biotechnology company. So my experience here going from traditional to digital is really in the biotech space, and hopefully some of my tips and tricks and experiences will translate into help for everyone else. So here's this picture is a picture at Bio Europe last fall. So this is the last. Well, no, actually, JP Morgan's the last live event I went to in early January, and I'm not sure when these are going to come back, but this is kind of like speed dating for biotech. So this was an event that had about, I think, 2,300 companies. They scheduled about 27,000 meetings over the course of 4 days. There were maybe 4,500 delegates in attendance, and so this is the main meeting hall. And speed dating. You've got 25 minutes and then 5 minutes to switch chairs. So hopefully what I talk about today will be helpful. All right. So I've broken this up into three groups. So we start on the pre-meetings. So the first thing is really, first bit of advice is to really know your platform. So, take advantage of webinars that the companies offer on this. In the biotech space, there's really two main meeting conference platforms. Bio.org has one, and then EBD Group or Informa Connect has the other. Both of them offer, webinars. I'm sure other digital platforms will do the same thing. So every system is different, and really, if you can learn the benefits, it's really going to help you make the jump to digital. One of the things I love about some of the platforms is they have templates. So when I'm doing pitch letters, I can load up different templates for who I'm targeting that particular day. And then the meeting platforms they all have their own idiosyncrasies. So if you can learn them, some platforms like Global Meet in this last EBD conference in Bio Europe Spring Digital, you could only get the person's email address while the meeting was going on. Other companies, they tend to provide that early on. But it's good to look at the web interface, but if there is an app, I would definitely say download it, because a lot of times the app has a little bit more capabilities or features. Going through some of these digital meetings, I've talked to people who are only using the web apps, and they were somewhat limited in terms of what they could do. So learn the system. That's my first piece of advice. The second one is, this is kind of basic marketing, but spend the time to build your online profile. In the systems that I've had experience with, they're kind of broken up into a delegate, a company, and products. And it's interesting because different information can be in each area. So sometimes the company will say specifically if they're looking for in-licensing or out-licensing, and other times specific delegates will have that information listed on their individual profiles. So if you take the time when you're looking at companies and, look down to that level of, is it the delegate or is it the company, it definitely will tend to benefit you. And then, the other one is if you don't have a good system like Jennifer's with the AI matchmaking, is just the good old keyword searching. So you just want to make sure that you have all the relevant, derivations of words. So our lead product is an anti-CD3 immunotoxin. So this is a fusion protein. And so we deplete T cells, and we give it for 4 days. We deplete T cells, and then by day 16, we get this 2,000% increase in CD8 central memory-like T cells. And we found that these can fight tumors for up to 2 years later post a single 4-day cycle with a half-life of 45 minutes. So we're modulating the immune system. So for us, the keywords are like immunotherapy, immuno-oncology, immunomodulation. So you tend to want to wrap those into your company descriptions, your product descriptions, and things so that it makes it easy for people to find you. Next tip, this goes for any, digital or traditional, is register early. In some of these platforms, they would have scheduling for the meetings, and that happens for the digital ones as well as the in-person ones. And so if there is a scheduling aspect to your digital platform, make sure that you have your meeting requests in, a couple of weeks before that first round of scheduling, because a lot of times what happens is, like in my experience with big pharmaceutical companies, they will do all the reviews, the week before the first round of scheduling, and a lot of time their slots fill up right away. So if you're late, you're going to diminish your chances for a successful meeting, and that goes for both the digital and the in-person meetings. And then the last tip on this slide is really test the meeting software. Find a quiet space. I'm here in my library. The other key tip is try and test your space for the specific times of days. I know if you're doing global things, if I'm meeting with somebody in China, it's going to be a 12-hour difference. I had one meeting where, I knew the sun would come in the morning. I closed the curtains, but the little detail windows above the curtains were giving hitting my camera and giving a really nice psychedelic effect. So definitely it's worth knowing when you're going to talk and making sure that, the space is correct for that. And finally, last piece of advice, make sure you have a good internet connection. Almost everybody has Wi-Fi, but really, personally, I prefer if you have a wired connection. If you have gigabit Ethernet, plug it in. It's going to be better, especially for video. All right, let's see for the next slide. So this is going to be difficult to see, but hopefully you can download the slides later and take a closer look. This just shows a typical profile. This was BioEurope Spring, and you can see different things. So one of the interesting things about these systems are, you have almost like your elevator pitch for the very beginning. So when you search on a company, a lot of times you'll be limited to a 255 or 256 character string that you can put in for your main description. So I'll go through and I'll rewrite that, down to the last character to get in the specific, aspects that we want, because our anti-CD3 has potential for cutaneous T-cell lymphoma. We have FDA fast track, but that's an orphan disease. And then there's, transplantation induction tolerance, and then combination immunotherapy with checkpoint blockade. So, it's important to look at that, search your own company, look at how your company comes up, look at other companies, and go back and rewrite it. And so I'll do an editing process where, I'll just go back and forth rewriting, see what shows up on that first screen, because it's really important that people see you the first time they search, that you get your point across. And then the next is meeting requests. So Next slide is meeting requests. So that this is, again, some of this is kind of basic marketing common sense. I mean, know your target. Do your research about read about the company and the delegates prior to a request. I think I mentioned I set up pitch letters based on specific targets. So, if this company is interested in orphan indications, I'll be pitching CTCL. If they're interested in transplantation or graft versus host disease, I have another letter. And again, as I mentioned in the previous slide, pitch the correct delegate. A lot of times, at least on in my experience, the delegate level will have some key information sometimes. And then next in the meeting, I always like to start with video. The real difference and the real difficulty between I found in the digital versus the online, the in-person versus the online or digital, is that it's difficult to make a personal connection and get pick up the nuances of the person you're interested in. So I have a couple of techniques that I use on that. Especially some systems will, if you share slides, it blanks out the video, and that again makes it more difficult because you can't gauge the person's interest to what you're talking about. So I tend to let the delegate go first and give their review and what they're interested in, and then I can tailor the pitch correctly to that. And the other key point I think I'd like to make is just it's important to let the person know that you're talking to interrupt and ask questions anytime they want, because that'll drive the conversation to what they're really interested in. And I think that's a huge advantage. Whether you're trying to sell a license or a product, I mean it's similar. You want the customer to get the information that they need out of the exchange, and that's key to it. Contact information, I think I mentioned that. You're not collecting business cards these days, so every pitch letter, I have my contact information on it. It's kind of surprising how many people don't. And I've had people come back and ask for meetings, other times. So it's useful to get your contact information out there. And then just regular etiquette. I try and answer all meeting requests. So even if I'm unsure if I'm going to meet with somebody, I'll have a pitch letter, or I'll have a template that says, hey, we're focused on business development and licensing or partnering. We're doing combination studies, and we're not meeting CROs at this time, let's say. And then there's sometimes when you don't really want to answer, because if you have time and you have slots open, you want to meet with them. I just send a quick note back through the system, the partnering system, that says, hey, your technology sounds interesting. I'd like to meet if I have available slots later, and then follow up a day before the meeting or two. And that's in conclusion. Let's see the last slide, Colleen. Take notes during these meetings. I think it's really important. You do a lot of meetings. All the information runs together. It'll help you and follow up. I've had people love something, and then these business development people are really busy and they run out of time. So you definitely ask them when to follow up. And in the biotech space, these meetings are sometimes the only place you can get to reach the gatekeeper. And once you meet them once, it's much easier to connect. So they're useful. And from my experience in just speaking to biotech, that they want to know three things. It's, does it work? Is it safe? And can I make money on it? So you gotta answer that. And the picture shows we're not going to be doing networking events for a while. So hopefully you can get some use out of the digital. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. Great information, Paul. Really great tips. Our next and last section is a combination of three dynamic and experienced women in international business: Colleen Fisher, Jessica Reynolds, and Ellen Meinhardt. A couple quick things to say, and I'd like to thank Colleen in particular with the U.S. Commercial Service for all your help with this event. This technology that we're using today is a new experience for us, and I've been getting some emails from some of you about issues that you've had, and so we apologize for those. Colleen has made it so much better than it could have been. So, Colleen, thank you for your help. Jessica Reynolds is with Maryland Commerce, and Ellen is with the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. We appreciate the collaboration with you, and we appreciate how you three ladies collaborate with each other in a very important region of exporting for the United States. Ellen, why don't you take it from here?
Thank you, Doug. Virginia's International Trade Division's goal is to assist Virginia companies explore and pursue business in international markets. If there are any Virginia businesses listening today, I encourage you to take advantage of Virginia's international business resources to keep moving your international sales forward during this pandemic. You will see my email at the end of this presentation, and please reach out to me, and I will ensure that you're leveraging all of our international business resources. Next, there it is. Next slide. Thank you. No, that's good. As you can see from this slide, Virginia has a variety of international business development resources, but for this webinar, I want to focus on what could be particularly helpful during the pandemic, such as virtual customized meetings and grants to reimburse virtual trade shows and international business expenses, such as localizing your website, export compliance, shipping, and a variety of other costs. So we'll first talk about money. Virginia has grant money to reimburse virtual international trade shows. Just like Messe Frankfurt and Bio Europe that we've heard that were previously discussed, a lot of international trade shows are going virtual and providing interesting sponsorship and lead gen opportunities for your company to connect with prospective clients. I encourage you to apply for a trade show grant and significantly improve the ROI for the trade show, or participate in a trade show that you may not have had the funds to attend without the grant. Virginia also has grants to reimburse international business expenses such as website localization, shipping, export compliance, international accounting, and a myriad of other international business expenses. I lastly want to highlight our 2-year Export Accelerator program, which we call the Virginia Leaders in Export Trade, or VALET program. Twice a year, we accept applications for this program, and on average, companies increase their international sales by 54% over the 2 years. Next slide, please. Virginia has contractors in 75 countries, and you can see them up here on the slide, and they provide Virginia businesses with customized research to determine whether or not the Virginia company should pursue business in that country, and if it should, our contractors can identify, qualify, and confirm virtual meetings for you with prospective clients and partners. I'd like to think of these contractors as your outsourced business development teams in their respective countries. We had to cancel our Mexican trade mission during this pandemic, and 4 of the 8 companies decided to do all their meetings for the week virtually. One of the 4 companies had simultaneous translation for all their virtual meetings. The meetings were a huge success. In fact, one company is pursuing a $150 million deal that was identified during one of his virtual meetings. I believe that even after the pandemic ends, more companies will choose to do virtual introductions and qualification meetings in order to save time and money. Please connect with me, and I'll ensure that you're leveraging all of Virginia's international business development resources. I would now like to introduce my colleague in Maryland, Jessica Reynolds. Jessica is the Senior Director for the Office of International Investment and Trade at the Maryland Department of Commerce. Jessica?
Thank you, Ellen. Yes, so similar to Ellen's role in Virginia, I'm with the state of Maryland, and I would like to make sure that any Maryland companies here on the call are familiar also with the Maryland services that are available to you. On the screen, you can see members of our team who cover different regions of the world. We have 16 foreign offices around the world. That's one of the services that we offer to you, similar to Virginia, covering many more countries. Some of those are regional. And we can offer free assistance to companies who are looking for market research, partner or distributor search, and things of that nature. The main program that I also wanted to point out during this particular Globinar is our Export MB Grant program. This program offers up to $5,000 in reimbursement for expenses. And the eligible expenses do include travel-related expenses, but something that has come up as a result of COVID-19 is that this partially SBA-funded program is now allowing a greater amount of those funds through the program to be used for non-travel activities. Those include items such as translation, website localization, digital marketing, shipping of sample products, compliance testing for export markets, and export research tool subscription. We also, through this program, can cover, just like we cover regular trade show registrations or mission registrations, it also can cover, of course, virtual missions and shows. So there's a number of qualifications for companies to apply for this program, which are listed here on the screen. That you have business operations in Maryland, you're in good standing with our Department of Assessments and Taxation, that the company be in existence for at least 1 year and not received an award in the past 12 months. It also is available specifically to small businesses as defined by the SBA. And if you are looking for the digital services as part of your project, we would look for you to already have an existing website, as it wouldn't cover the initial development of a website. So this program, we take applications on the first of every month, and anyone on the call is welcome to reach out to me for more information about the application process and how exactly that would work and types of projects that might be eligible. But specific to this webinar, I will point out that we are also, similar to Ellen's team, sort of experimenting now with some of these virtual options. We had a delegation planned to attend CIDAI in Chile at the end of March, and that was canceled. And we also have had about half of those participants interested in moving their matchmaking meetings that we had arranged for them through our foreign office online. And so we are currently in the process of getting those different stages of getting those set up for our companies. So, we look forward to assisting companies moving forward, both when things begin to recover, but also in the virtual world, as I agree with Ellen that probably some of these things are going to be here to stay. So with that, I would like to go ahead and pass the baton to my colleague at the U.S. Export Assistance Center, Colleen Fisher, who heads up that office.
Thank you, Jessica, and thanks to all my colleagues. As everyone's mentioned, we are all adapting to new technologies, including the one we are using to deliver this webinar. So we've all collaborated, and as everyone mentioned, we try to start early and get familiar. So hopefully you had a decent experience, and thank you for your patience. We're all learning through this. My name is Colleen Fisher. I'm the director of the U.S. Commercial Service Office in Maryland. We are the federal government's export promotion agency, and we fall within the U.S. Department of Commerce. Our mission, as you can see on this slide, is to grow U.S. exports to increase U.S. jobs. So the main way that we do that is through our network of overseas offices on the ground. And you can see in this slide we have a network across the globe, and we can service you through our team that works in these offices who are often housed at the U.S. embassies overseas. And these are commercial diplomats that can help your company in overseas markets with many services. And they also run teams of local nationals that will be able to speak the local language and connect you with the local economy. Our local trade specialists in the United States are the ones that you might come in contact with first if you're located in America, and we can counsel you and connect you with all those resources I mentioned across the globe that were showcased on the previous slide. I'm the director of the Maryland office, but as you can see from this slide, we have offices across the country to help you and your business, wherever you're located, connect to global resources and help you become export ready. We help our companies become export ready through supporting their export growth in many areas, including developing export strategies, partnering to do background checks on overseas partners, doing business matchmaking, which we are doing now very virtually through email introductions and depending on the time zone, providing some web and video introductions. We counsel with our overseas team. Given the changing regulations for COVID-19 overseas, we are able to provide some guidance on what's happening in each market. We can help you promote your products as appropriate and give you some guidance on the export regulations. And as my colleagues have said, we help and provide support at trade shows, which looks a bit different these days, but certainly is there to support you virtually as you participate and prepare for these trade shows. So with that, let me turn it back to Doug. I know we're getting to the end of the hour. to see if Doug would like to ask a few questions or summarize us, and thank you again.
Thank you so much, Colleen. Thank you for everybody. We only have a couple minutes left, so we don't have time for all the questions. Keep asking your questions either online or send them to info@globalchamber.org, and we can process those in a blog post that we can send with the video, with the recording later. In the remaining time, I want to do just two things very quickly. I will turn it back over to you, Mi-Jong, to close the program. But if I could just ask Bill, Jennifer, and Paul, could you each take 30 seconds and just tell us, what does this new normal look like a year from now? When you've all made some tremendous strides in adjusting to where we are, what are we going to be talking about a year from now? Bill, how about you? What do you think? You might have to unmute.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. What will it look like a year from now? I'd ideally like to see free travel, open borders, getting on planes. I long for the way it was before. Will that happen? I don't think so. I think we will have, as has been mentioned, travel bubbles where you can travel from some countries into others. There will be restrictions. Perhaps you'll have an immunization card if vaccines are out, showing that you have received the vaccine against COVID. I'm anticipating, again, some travel, but with restrictions, and a lot more being done online than has been done before. So
okay.
That's my quick crystal ball.
You're not looking forward to go back to teletypes, but definitely travel is going to be required. How about you, Jennifer?
I mean, same thing. We're super travel heavy, and also everyone coming, the exporters and importers all coming to our show. But I think from a standpoint, digitalization is probably going to be here to stay, and everyone should just get comfortable with all the tools that were mentioned before. Zoom, everything that we're using, but also I think when the physical event does take place again, there's going to be so many restrictions, like what way you're walking down the aisles, how wide they are, how many people are in the venues together. So I think overall, I mean, there's going to be massive change. Will they stick forever? I don't know, but I certainly hope not. But I think in the next 2 years are going to look a lot different for all of us.
And disinfecting, I presume, as well.
Oh, gosh,
that we've never seen before.
I mean, I think it's like the grocery store these days times 1,000 is going to be a trade show, really.
Mm.
Extraordinary. And Paul, how about you? What do you think?
Well, being in the biotech space and knowing a little bit about vaccine development, I'm thinking get used to your online experience and make the most of it. I think we're, going to be doing this for the next year or two.
Next year or two. Okay. Well, that's thankfully you guys have all adjusted. Thank you all, Bill, Jennifer, Paul, Colleen, Jessica, and Ellen. Really appreciate the information, the collaboration, and I'd like to now turn over the program to close it to Mi-Jong Hibbets, the Global Chamber Executive Director for Baltimore, Washington.
Yes, well, thank you very much today for the great panelists and the great presentation. I think it was a really great information for exporters in this region and, in the U.S. and beyond to rethink their existing really strategy, talking about some of the, business development and even customer relationship and marketing and sales, how we have to actually shift and make some changes during this time. And many presenters said, we will see this type of situation for some time being. So I think we should incorporate our businesses to incorporate some of the strategies or techniques or thinking that we learned today, incorporate their plans and strategy in the future. I hope this webinar, Globinar, was helpful for the attendees, and you will see, you're looking at those contact information for Global Chamber and U.S. Commercial Service, Maryland Department of Commerce, Virginia Economic Development Partnership. So anybody who wants to get connected with the presenters and speakers today, just send us an email. We'll happy to make that connection, as well as also the resources those three collaborating organizations are providing. So again, I appreciate all of you time today, and I hope to you all stay well and healthy, and hopefully that we can see you soon. In person, but we will have a lot of more, the Globinars and the webinars for us to get interact virtually for the meantime. So again, thank you very much, and stay well.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great day.